From Here to the Stars, a video series created by the Tennessee Valley Interstellar Workshop. The TVIW is a non-profit organization dedicated to thoroughly exploring the science and engineering that can eventually open up the reality of interstellar travel. I am your host, Stephen Euin Cobb. Our guest today is Dr. Cameron M. Smith. Dr. Smith is a prehistorian at Portland State University's Department of Anthropology, focusing on human evolution, past, present, and future. He has been published widely in peer-reviewed technical journals and has also written for the general public in many magazines, including Scientific American, Archaeology, and Spaceflight. Dr. Smith has written nearly a dozen books and spoken before many audiences, such as at TEDx in Brussels and Portland. And he has been featured in many television programs on the History Channel, Discovery Channel Canada, and the National Geographic Channel. Here is Dr. Cameron M. Smith.
I see that you're on the schedule to speak at the 2016 Tennessee Valley Interstellar Workshop. For those who can't be there, if you would, tell us a little bit about the information that you will present.
I'm going to be talking about the cultural and biological aspects of sending humanity, or a small percentage of humanity, to an exoplanet. Basically, people are working on designs for what are called world ships. These are gigantic craft, sometimes several of them in parallel, but they contain tens of thousands of people, and the idea is to send some to an exoplanet. You know, we're discovering exoplanets now at a rate of one per day, roughly, and it won't be long before we can even detect the atmosphere of exoplanets. The James Webb Space Telescope is going to be able to analyze the atmosphere of exoplanets. And we're going to find one that we want to go to. And within a century, the idea of the group that I work with, which is called Icarus Interstellar, it's a think tank. The idea is at the end of the century, give humanity the option to travel at near light speeds and reach exoplanets. And so I study the human aspect, the population issues, the genetic issues, and also the cultural change through time.
I'm curious, are some of the challenges of living an extended life in space specific to space, or is it mostly maybe a small community or isolation from the rest of humanity?
Oh, that's a great question, because really many of the conditions of life are going to be very much like they are here on Earth. And oftentimes we think of space settlement or sending people on one of these craft, and we think it's a very strange environment, vacuum or no gravity or something like that. But no, of course we have to have an atmosphere, so we'll have a breathable gas at roughly or something similar to Earth pressure. And we will achieve the effect of gravitation by rotating the craft, so that everybody's seen this, for example, in 2001, the movie, you see the rotating spacecraft and people have gravity. The reason that we need to have these essentially normal conditions for humans is that, generally speaking, evolutionary systems don't take major radical changes that occur very quickly very well. So really, we'll make an environment that is much like the surface of the Earth, much like what humanity has experienced for thousands of years, and we'll essentially send that little bubble of Earth conditions to one of these interstellar or one of these exoplanets. So yes, what I'm looking at over some centuries, I'm looking at the genetic and the cultural change. And yes, a lot of my studies have to do with, well, what has that world been like, or what has transpired over several centuries in smallish sort of village or town sort of populations.
Is this somewhat like the people that have to live for extended periods of time in a submarine?
Well, the idea used to be that it would be like a submarine, and that you would send a tiny group of people. There would be explorers, almost like a military craft, high discipline and all of this. But over centuries, that sort of structure doesn't, I don't think that structure will work. Even, for example, if we look at the Antarctic and we send crews of people down there to the Antarctic, they can go, 4 or 5 seasons before they really say, I need to get home. I need to have normal conditions of life. And that means a house and fresh water and neighbors and different people to talk to, the ability to move around, that kind of thing. So I'm thinking really my better analogy rather than a submarine is a village, any town USA, Mayberry, where you have 5, 10,000 people, and it's large. The technology now is coming along. People are learning how to manufacture in space, so it can be a large village-sized craft with thousands of people, and they have homes, and they don't live in barracks. They live in houses, homes, and they go about daily life just like we do here. If they have kids, the kids go to school. They get up, the adults, they go and do their work. They might work in the maintenance. Most of them will be farmers because they have to keep the regenerable food and oxygen supply, which is going to be plants, running. So I think it'll be very much like it's kind of strange to think about, but I think it'll be very much like an almost a semi-rural town existence.
How much contact do you think people will have? I mean, if they're very distant, say they're on the way to another star, well, then communications would be slow. And so I'm wondering how much contact they'll have with, so to speak, the home world.
Oh boy, that's really interesting. I've started to break up the voyage. You need to think about it. You need to break it up into pieces. It's too big to take on. And so I've broken it up into at least three what I call ages. Let's say it's a 500-year voyage. Well, if we can look at the medieval, we can see, for example, a relatively recent period that's about 500 years long. And we can see, oh, there's an early medieval, there's a middle period, and then there's a late period. When you break it up into those segments, one thing I've started thinking about is that the earliest age, the departure age, let's say the first third of a 500-year voyage, those people will have connections with Earth. Some of the people who are on this vessel or vessels will have been born on Earth, so they have direct experience of Earth. But over time, that's going to go away. They will have, I think, less and less communication with Earth. The middle population, and this is really extraordinary for the human experience, the middle population doesn't have connection with Earth. They've never been to Earth. They will never go to Earth, and they don't know anybody who ever actually lived upon the Earth. And yet they will also never reach the exoplanet. It's too far. And that is well, that's worth thinking about. What are their concerns? What will their priorities and interests and motivations be? And then the final phase or the final age of this three-age time period is arrival. And now they're thinking about planetness again. They're back into the world of thinking about planets, going down to the surface of a planet, all of those issues. And so I think, yeah, over time, connection with Earth will be cut. And they might want to send messages back and forth, but they will have to be independent. They will have to be thinking and sort of motivated by their own cultural values.
Do you have any sense of how big a community ship would have to be a healthy one? And I don't mean the physical size of the ship. I mean by numbers of people.
Yes, some of my work has been in the population genetics and what population size do we need to maintain genetic health. Ecologists measure the health of any population, cheetahs or turtles or something, that the genetic health of a population is measured by its diversity. And that's because if everyone is the same, if everyone is genetically the same, they're very vulnerable to one factor, one disease, or one environmental variable coming along and wiping out everybody because nobody is a little bit different. So genetic health is in genetic diversity, and my studies have found that in human populations, you typically have breeding populations or demes or breeding populations of around 10,000. And you need about a population of 10,000 to reflect the whole of human genetic diversity. For a number of reasons, people have suggested smaller populations for interstellar voyaging, but I'm suggesting large populations. Another reason I suggest large populations is that in nature, vertebrates, which are a big group of life forms, much like humans, including humans, in nature, almost no vertebrate species has again one of these reproductive populations of less than about 7,000. And I'm taking all of my guidance for how to do this with a good chance of success from evolutionary biology. And so again, don't do something that is radically different for the genome or for human culture. And so I'm being guided by what do we know about, let's say, vertebrate population biology. With regard to specific numbers, I would send at least 10,000. I've done some modeling what happens in catastrophes or the spread of communicable disease, this kind of thing. And what I've suggested is numbers on the order of 40,000. So imagine 4 ships, each flying in parallel. Maybe they are just hundreds of kilometers from another. They're tightly packed, although they're not connected by tubes or anything. This is just one of many configurations, but each one of these 10,000 people aboard a village. Now you have 40,000 people. One of the reasons for this is that this lets you arrive at an exoplanet with a population that's large enough that if you have a catastrophe, you still have enough people to be genetically viable. Some people have suggested much smaller numbers that basically just squeak in, right? They slide into home base, at this exoplanet with just enough humans to be genetically viable. I don't like that idea because my analogy is when I get on a 747 and the captain tells us how we're going to fly to New York, for example, I don't want him to say or her to say, we have just enough gas to reach New York.
Mm-hmm.
No, we need a reserve so that when you get there, you're not just squeaking in. You have, a couple hours of reserve fuel, let's say, to if there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, a reserve population is a safe way to do it. And my studies have shown something on the order of 40,000 is a very good number.
Beyond genetic diversity, what about the psychological implications of being in a smaller community than, of course, the entire world? What problems and challenges might that bring up? Is that also set a lower limit on numbers of population?
Yeah, the cultural and psychological issues are very interesting, and we really don't know much about them. One of the reasons I'm going to the Tennessee Valley Interstellar Workshop and writing a book on what it's going to be called Principles of Space Anthropology, we really don't know yet, or we haven't thought about the cultural issues and how do populations, again, if we presume that they can stay alive biologically, what do we do for cultural health through time? And I, like I say, I don't know. We don't know yet. We don't know what are the good guiding principles or what sort of structures have remained stable over this kind of timeline. But I should say, it's in the world of anthropology. The studies have been done, they just haven't been drawn together from the perspective, right, of one of these interstellar voyages. So my research, what I can tell you is this. My research is going into looking at, again, village life, semi-rural, although there is an industrial component to it, but semi-rural village life of populations on the order of some thousands. And what's interesting is that it turns out after the invention of farming about 10,000 years ago, we get the idea that then, very rapidly cities and urbanism and civilizations pop up. But actually, in most places where farming was invented, people settled into populations of 8 to 10,000, something like this, sometimes smaller, but some populations on the order of what we're looking at. And they persisted. Those village life of sort of agrarian people oftentimes persisted for thousands of years before the invention of civilization and the interconnectedness and networking of the ancient states or ancient civilizations like the Aztec or the Sumerians. So a lot of my research is looking at, now I'll see if this is appropriate or not, but a lot of it is looking at the sort of early agricultural people. So they're doing farming, it's not hunting and gathering, they're doing farming and they're living in populations that are quite similar to what we're looking at for interstellar voyaging. And they got along. We don't know exactly how, we don't know their cultural structures and values, but that's being researched right now.
Your work in building cheaper, simpler spacesuits has gotten a good bit of attention. If you would, tell us about your ideas for spacesuits.
My idea with trying to build a simpler, lighter, cheaper spacesuits is simply that what we use today, the suits that we use today, they cost 50 odd thousand dollars, and one of the barriers to space exploration is cost. And my objective has been to get it down to a $1,000 spacesuit. And our tests so far have shown that underwater, in altitude chambers, in cold chambers, and flying in helicopters, for example, to high altitudes, is showing that we're at roughly the Gemini or early Apollo spacesuit technology level. So I'm just trying to put in one little practical part of space exploration, in addition to my studies, for example, in genetics and population biology.
Well, thank you, Doctor. I sure appreciate you taking the time for the interview.
Thanks, Stephen.
That was Dr. Cameron M. Smith. I have been your host, Stephen Euin Cobb. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and you can subscribe to our channel for more such videos. On behalf of all of us here at the Tennessee Valley Interstellar Workshop, I thank you.